You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 655.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. The view from our side of the cockpit door. With your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from APG headquarters in Roswell, Georgia. Today's show is recorded on the week of March 17th, 2025.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Put your light and he's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, a final report on a 2-year-old crash finds that a North Dakota state senator did not use runway lights while taking off. He died along with 3 family members. And a Boeing's jet engine catches fire at the gate following an unscheduled landing. Also ahead, more news and your feedback. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in the upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 655 is ready for pushback.
Well, thank you, Radio Roger, who is an award-winning TV and radio reporter, currently at the #1 all-news station in the nation, 1010 Winds on 92.3 FM in
New York City!
Welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast covering the latest in aviation news and answering your great feedback. I'm Captain Jeff, a former U.S. Air Force pilot and retired Delta Airlines captain. And joining me from his studio,
in Hartford, Hereford, and Hampshire,
a retired professional dog photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, retired Airbus A330, A340 captain for Virgin Atlantic Airways. It's Captain Nick.
Hi there, Jeff. Lovely to be back on the show again. My, what a big one we're having today. Now, 655 reminds me of the manufacturer's serial number, MSN 655. It's an Airbus A350-1000 belonging to Virgin Atlantic Airways. Oh, lovely. It's got registration, Golf, Victor, so that's Golf for UK, Victor for Virgin, then Echo, Lima, Juliet. Now, that's not very obvious because most of the registrations mean something. But if I tell you that it's been named Benny Jet, you'll probably know what ELJ stands for.
I'm sure Tanya will get it. Tanya's right into her music.
Oh, yeah.
Eric Clapton.
Close. No. Not really, though. Okay.
Elton John.
Elton
John.
There we go.
I got it.
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, that's a lot better than like talking about airplanes that get accidentally shot down by military airplanes over the Gulf. I wasn't
going to mention that.
Quite uplifting, I must say.
Don't look up Iran Air Flight 655.
Don't look it up.
No, don't look that up. No.
All right.
We're not getting
that. You would have gotten it, Tanya.
I might do a plain tail, though. I think that'd be good.
Yeah. All right.
Sure.
Let's keep on going here with these intros. What do you think? From his home studio in the air capital, low and slow pilot, A&P mechanic, old airplane enthusiast, and an engineer in the aerospace and defense industry. It's Macho Man Nick Camacho.
Hey, Captain Jeff. I'm glad to join you guys again this week. If it sounds like I'm under a herd of elephants, my son just got a new pair of roller skates for his birthday a few days ago. He's currently roller skating in the kitchen, so I'll work on getting that contained, but you may hear him a little bit here.
Ambience.
Yeah. I didn't hear a thing you said because the Macho Man playing in the background, it covered up everything in my headphones. But I'm sure whatever you said was great. Great to see you again, Nick. And also joining us from the north woods of the Atlanta suburbs, race car driver, high performance, high altitude, tail dragging, and complex endorsed. Why is your tail dragging? Commercial instrument rated pilot with an affinity for self-taught haute cuisine and anything with enough horsepower to kill him. It's Alpha Juliet.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me back. Glad to be here. Looking forward to talking about some interesting stories today.
Oh, I am looking forward to it as well. And as we mentioned earlier, we're going to also have another host join us in progress. But last but certainly not least, from our home studio in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, retired financier and aviation enthusiast, spreadsheet master, and our producer, it's Liz Piper.
Hi, everybody. I'm not a pilot, but my tail's dragging today.
I know. Very
It
good.
really
I love
is.
it. That's that deserves like a bell sound. There we
you
go. That's a real bell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, have a good show, yous guys.
Well, thanks.
Cheers,
I'm looking
Liz.
forward to it.
Bye.
Yeah. Cheers.
Stand by for news.
All right, going to start off with this. Some sad news. John Paddy Hemingway, last surviving pilot of the Battle of Britain, dies at 105 years old. This is from the New York Times. A fighter pilot in a vastly outnumbered Royal Air Force, one of the few hailed by Churchill, he took to the skies to help stave off a Nazi land invasion of Britain. Let's see. There's a picture of him. Are we showing that? Let's see.
Yep,
we sure are. That's him in 1940. He never saw his role in the Battle of Britain as anything other than doing the job he was trained to do.
He would have been 20 then.
Said in a
He would have been 20 in 1940.
He would have been 20 years old at the time. Wow. Looks older for some reason.
He does.
Yeah.
It's the moustache.
People did
must
look
be.
older in those days.
Yeah. Anyway, let's see. Addressing the British House of Commons in August 1940, Prime Minister Winston Churchill paid tribute to the pilots of the Royal Air Force who were staving off an impending German invasion of the British Isles in what would be known as the Battle of Britain. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few, Churchill proclaimed. Very famous words. When John,
he had a way with words, didn't he?
He did.
Okay.
He did. He was quite an orator. When John A. Hemingway died in Dublin on Monday at 105, the Royal Air Force announced his death. He was the last known survivor of the few, nearly 3,000 pilots and crew who saved Britain in the early stages of World War II. He was known as Paddy. He piloted Hurricane fighters in the battle, which took place in the skies above Britain between July 10 and October 31 in 1940. Hitler had planned a September 1940 invasion of the British Isles, known as Operation Sea Lion, but he postponed it indefinitely when the RAF, vastly outnumbered at the height of battle, with 749 fighter aircraft compared with the Luftwaffe's 2,550, beat back German bombers and fighters, foiling his quest to establish the air supremacy that Germany needed to support invading ground troops. However, the Blitz, Germany's bombing of London and other British cities, extended into the spring of 1941. Anyway, it goes on. We'll have the entire
nice long article
from the New York Times in the show notes. And we need to stop talking about this before Steffen joins us, because it seems like every time Captain Steffen joins us, we have stuff regarding the World War II.
No war talk. Okay, moving on.
Okay. All right. Let's move on.
I think real quick, I think it is important for me to point out that there's a movie about the Battle of Britain, and I think it's about the most well-done flying movie that there is. So it's older. It's, I think, from 68 or 69, but it's got all sorts of pretty significant movie stars in it. Michael Caine's in it, and Christopher Plummer's in it. And
what's it called? Battle of Britain?
Battle of Britain.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's,
I think the big fighting sequence that they had was all real aircraft,
real airplanes. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing aerial photography.
Yeah. It has, and it received so many honors and awards over the years because it was amazingly well choreographed and flown. Just brilliant. And
Cool.
Yeah, it was a great movie. I was about 13 years old, and I was in my uniform when they had the premiere in our local Odeon cinema, and I was out there with my collecting box for the RAF Benevolent Fund because everyone came out of there, the tears coming down their face, and it was a great time to shake a tin can in their face and get some get some money for the RAF Benevolent Fund. It was brilliant.
Fabulous. Good recommendation.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Okay. Let's go to this from the Aviation Herald. An American Airlines Boeing 737-800 registration November 885 November, performing flight 1006 from Colorado Springs, Colorado to Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, with 172 passengers and 6 crew, was climbing out of Colorado Springs when the crew stopped the climb at about 16,000 feet, reporting right-hand engine, CFM 56, vibrations, and decided to divert to Denver, where the aircraft landed safely on runway 16 right about 1 hour after departure. The aircraft taxied to the apron. At the gate, the right-hand engine caught fire, prompting the emergency evacuation via slides. The fire was put out by emergency services. 12 passengers were taken to local hospitals with minor injuries.
This looks like an evacuation via wings.
Yes, it does look like. I don't see. Are there any slides at all? That not in that picture anyway.
I see them.
Yeah, we're looking at the picture in the show notes of some of the passengers out on the left wing using both overwing exits there, and I believe on the 7-3, don't they go to their left toward the aft part of the aircraft if the flaps are extended and they slide down? Isn't that the way that works in the 7-3? Any 7-3 pilots out there? But apparently,
I had heard that, Jeff. Yeah.
But
most of the aircraft I know where they have wing exits, there's a slide that inflates and you jump on it to get off the wing. But I had heard that the flaps were used. Yes.
Oh, Peter's saying flaps were not extended.
Yeah, the flaps weren't extended, so they probably did their normal after landing flow checklist. Where they retract all of the lift devices and control surfaces and put them in the proper position. They weren't. I don't think they were anticipating that there would be an emergency evacuation, and I'm not sure. Maybe that may be part of the checklist to extend the flaps if you're intending to do an emergency evacuation. Perhaps this was an uncommanded event, and the crew didn't know that people were leaving over those overwing exits, and so that they didn't know that they needed to run that checklist and extend the flaps. Anyway, they're all stranded there on the wing.
Yeah.
Interesting photos.
Now, I'm curious, Jeff. Well, we don't know because there's not really a lot of detailed technical information. But having come back with engine vibration, do you think the crew shut that engine down on landing? And I'd be curious to know if you would have taxied all the way to the gate with that engine. I mean, it's not very well in hindsight. We know what's about to happen, but
right. I think that if we diverted and we had, excessive vibrations, I would definitely shut it down. I'd be surprised if they left it running. Maybe it was maybe they had gone through the shutdown procedure and there were still a lot of hot parts on the engine, and that somehow there was some kind of a fluid leak and it caught fire. I don't know. I don't. If it were a normal situation with vibrations, I would shut it down and just do as you said, Captain Nick. I probably would have just continued to the gate. However, I guess it depends on how bad the vibrations were. If they were pretty significant, I might just stop and have emergency services take a look at us before we continued to the gate.
I think that would have been a good compromise, and we don't know if they did or not. But there's certainly no emergency services following them to the gate, because normally if you've had a problem that's severe enough for you to turn around and go back to where you're coming, there's really no penalty in having the fire trucks rolled. It doesn't cost you anything. And it's kind of like, well, it could be really useful. And it's only when you see something like this happen, I hope that every pilot out there goes, well, perhaps if I was in that situation, I would ask for the fire tracks and ask them, at least the leader, I forget what you call him over there, Red One or something.
Red One in Canada.
Yeah, in Canada.
I ask him to trail along behind till you get safely shut down at the gate. And perhaps a few trucks and things, because if that fire had blossomed a bit quicker and got a bit worse, I think there were some pretty upset passengers, I think, at some point, because there was an awful lot of smoke. They were completely engulfed at one point
in the cabin,
in fierce back smoke, and there was definitely a fire around that engine. I would have been more than a bit worried. I might have been climbing back in.
Had to
going
first
out
class.
the front of the airplane, yeah.
Metro Doc says it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, at least it wasn't a Max.
Yeah, indeed.
According to Metro.
And Peter says,
Metro Doc. Peter Tarantelli says it's on the evac checklist. Yeah, that's what I assume.
Interesting.
They,
but I mean, we can say this in retrospect. If it just been vibration, he shut the engine down, takes it back, nothing happened, no one would have said a word.
Yeah, I agree. All right. We'll see if we get any more information about this, and we'll report on it. Next one from ADN.com.
I think it's the Anchorage Daily News.
There we go. Anchorage Daily News. You're right. Okay. Let's see. A preliminary report on from the NTSB, the Bering airplane that crashed onto a floating ice floe thing near Nome, Alaska. Let's see, crashed near Nome last month, killing the pilot and all 9 passengers. Was more than 1,000 pounds too heavy for the icy weather it was flying into, according to an NTSB preliminary report released on Wednesday. The crash was the 3rd fatal civilian aviation incident in the U.S. in less than a week and one of Alaska's deadliest in recent decades. Well, the good news is that's the 3, right? Don't they always happen in 3s?
Yeah, that's what they say.
Let's see, the Bering Air Cessna Caravan left Unalakleet the afternoon of February 6 and went down just over 30 miles southeast of Nome. 6 of the passengers were returning from jobs in Unalakleet, including a crew working on the water plant and a teaching mentor. 3 others and the pilot were residents of Unalakleet or Nome, one of the 2 cities. The next day, the U.S. Coast Guard confirmed the deaths of all 10 people aboard Flight 445. Freezing rain was reported in Nome at the time of the crash. A large weather front over western Alaska created the potential for ice buildup as the plane neared the airport, according to the NTSB. The combination of occupants, baggage, and cargo put the plane's takeoff weight at 9,865 pounds, about 1,058 pounds over the maximum takeoff gross weight for flight into known or forecast icing conditions, NTSB investigator in charge Timothy Sorensen wrote. The FAA requires operators to follow the weight limitations. The maximum gross takeoff weight generally reflects the heaviest weight at which a plane can safely land. There was nothing loaded onto that Bering air flight that would have made it extraordinarily heavy, according to the NTSB Alaska Chief Clint Johnson. The report described just under 800 pounds of baggage or cargo. It's the passengers, the pilot, the fuel on board, in addition to cargo, tools, everything you could possibly imagine coming out of the bush. Yeah, lots of stuff there. Along with the cargo compartment, the plane was outfitted with an additional pod that was certified or certificated by the FAA. The cargo pod allowed Bering Air to operate under a higher maximum weight during normal conditions, but not when icing was possible. Before they left, they left Unalakleet, I guess. They had to delay a little bit for de-icing. A controller informed pilot Chad Antil that the runway in Nome needed de-icing and would temporarily close for 10 to 15 minutes. Oh, okay. So they were going to Nome, correct? Or were they
They were,
leaving?
yeah.
Okay.
So they were told to delay their departure so that they could de-ice the runway in Nome.
Slow down a little bit to prevent the flight from arriving.
This
before
is
the
a
runway.
fun
So they're already in flight
lining
then.
up.
Yeah. So I guess I guess what this is saying is that they were already airborne at this time, and they told them to slow down a little bit because they needed to temporarily close for 10 to 15 minutes to do the de-icing at the airport. He acknowledged the statement. The plane slowed and leveled off at 6,000 feet before descending to 4,000 feet a few minutes later. Then, about a minute before the plane disappeared, the autopilot was disengaged, and the flight speed and altitude dropped, it said. So I can kind of see what's happening here, right? You have the autopilot on. They tell you to delay a little bit, slow down. You're in icing conditions, and I would imagine the pilot didn't turn off the autopilot. It would probably disengaged because at a certain point, the autopilot loses its authority to control and keep a steady altitude. And it probably just went, okay, you have the airplane. And then it just kind of lost control and crashed. Investigators examining the wreckage noted minor ice accumulation on some leading edge surfaces and significant accumulation at the base of the strobe light at the top of the plane's tail fin. Yeah, if you have icing back there on the tail, that could be a very critical thing as far as how well the control surfaces work. And then you throw in, as you said, Captain Nick, or you were hinting regarding the, some people call it the Swiss cheese model. We like to call it the lining up of the Funyuns. The things just conspired to be a bad situation for this flight and lost control and crashed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, freezing rain is the worst of the types of icing conditions that you really can fly around in. It's incredibly dangerous because as the super cold rain drops as water and impacts on the aircraft, it will turn into ice. That impact will trigger the very cold rain to turn into ice. But the little bit of heat that's generated by the actual impact of the raindrop on the wing or whatever part of the fuselage just warms it up a tiny bit so it doesn't go straight into brittle rime ice. It warms up a little bit and dribbles back down the airframe and freezing as it goes, and that turns into that horrible clear, heavy, sticky clear ice that's hard to see and adds weight very quickly. So if you're actually going through, a shower of freezing rain, you can very quickly build up a very dangerous layer of ice that's very hard to get rid of, and is every aircraft that has to fly at those sort of altitudes, it's the kind of worst environment that you can imagine. It would give me the heebie-jeebies. It was bad enough when I saw normal icing arrive on my airplane, but the idea of going through freezing rain was a big concern. So he was on a hiding to nothing, and then he probably didn't think too much about it. I'll just, rather than keep my speed up because I now need to add a factor because I'm possibly accruing ice, he's actually going to do the reverse. He's now going to try slowing down to what is probably, his slowest comfortable cruise speed, but probably quite close to the stalling speed. Well, the stalling speed in normal conditions, but now you've got the wing with a layer of ice on, perhaps, or the tailplane. You're on a hiding to nothing. You really need to be flying well above your normal cruise speed to be really safe until you can get rid of all that ice. So. I feel sorry for everything here but it's just a lesson, a really big lesson for people who do this kind of flying.
Yes. There's a picture of the crash site, and you can see some snow/ice buildup on the horizontal stabilizer. And then this next one, they're showing the strobe light mounted on top of the vertical fin with significant ice buildup on that. So, yeah, looks like they were operating in conditions that were unsafe. And as you just eloquently described, Captain Nick, slowing down and is the opposite of what you want to do in this kind of situation.
Yeah. And that weight, I can understand how, all those little bits that added into him being overweight, he probably didn't trigger because, like the man said, he didn't have anything particularly heavy on board. It was just like a normal collection, everyone's bits and bobs, 10 passengers in that aircraft. But to be flying over 1,000 pounds over the max takeoff weight for the flight, which is under 10,000 pounds. So
yes, that's more than 10%.
You've got more than 10% overweight. Golly, that and the icing and slowing down, you're just putting yourself in a really nasty corner.
Yep.
I'm going to put up Peter's question, but I don't think he's right. Didn't they have higher gross weight? I don't know. Anyway.
Let's see. Peter in our live chat says, is compensating for the weight of possible ice the reason for the lower gross airplane weight?
But
certainly, I would say yes. Not just the weight, but yeah. Go ahead. One of you guys knows.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it
has
to do with just general performance, right? There's going to be a combination of added weight to the airframe, but you're also going to lose performance as you get ice in areas of the airplane where, they're kind of shape dependent. So,
and possibly what Peter's referring to is they did get a gross weight increase with that cargo pod, but you can't go into known icing. You can't take off and fly into known icing at that higher gross weight.
Right.
Yeah, another reason for that is probably just because when they did all the flight testing for that STC, they probably didn't extend their flight test envelope into, icing scenarios. They just said it's not worth the cost of adding that bullet point. We can do this a lot cheaper by just saying, like, you can do all these things with the pod in normal weather, but you can't go into icing. And then
right.
Limits
you can have the pod, but you can't put anything in it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is what we have final. As far as an update for, that was the prelim, right? And then we're waiting for the final.
Yeah.
Next. Okay. Let's continue on then with this preliminary report from the Canadian Transportation Safety Board. The Air Transportation Safety Investigation Alpha 25 Oscar 0021 preliminary report. Collision with terrain, not a train, but terrain.
I was just going to say.
That would be
damn trains get everywhere.
I know. I think there would have been more fatalities if they had actually collided with a train. Anyway, Endeavor Air doing business as the Delta Connection flight this took place on, I'm trying to remember exactly when this happened, February 17, 2025. The CRJ 900 Lima Romeo, registration 932 X-ray Juliet, serial number 15194, was operating as a Endeavor Air Flight 4819 from Minneapolis, St. Paul to Toronto, Pearson International. During the landing on runway 23, the aircraft impacted the runway, the right wing detached, and a fire ensued. The aircraft overturned and slid down the runway inverted, coming to a rest near the intersection of runway 23 and 15 left. Aircraft rescue and firefighting responded, and all passengers and crew evacuated. Let's see. They're kind of rehashing the flight here in the next few paragraphs. I guess we should probably go ahead and read these paragraphs here. The flight proceeded uneventfully, and the crew received clearance for the instrument landing system approach to runway 23 at Toronto. The landing reference speed for the approach was 139 knots. Final approach is flown at VREF plus 5. When operating in gusty conditions, then you increase the reference speed by 1/2 of the gust factor, not to exceed 10 knots indicated, according to their procedures. On the occurrence flight, the flight crew set the bug to VREF plus 5. or 144 knots. Given the reported wind gusts, the approach was flown at 149. Let's see, the aircraft descended through 500 feet above ground level. The aircraft's indicated airspeed was 150. Its ground speed was 121. So you can see there was a lot of wind, a lot of headwind there. The engine thrust was indicating approximately 64% N1. The rate of descent was 720 feet per minute. The localizer and glide slope were centered. 5 seconds later, the pilot flying disconnected the autopilot. While the aircraft was descending through 175 feet above ground, its indicated airspeed was 144 with a ground speed of 121 and a rate of descent of 672 feet per minute. The thrust remained at approximately 64% N1. So far, all this seems normal. Typical descent rates for jet airline kind of aircraft are in the 700, 800 foot per minute range, I'd say. Wouldn't you, Captain?
Yeah, it's a nice stable approach, really, wasn't it, Jeff?
Let's see. When it was descending through 153 feet, its indicated airspeed increased to 154, where the ground speed did not change appreciably, consistent with a performance increasing wind gust. The pilot flying pulled back the thrust levers, and as a result, over the following 5 seconds, N1 decreased from 64% to approximately 43%, where it remained until touchdown. The airspeed began to decrease. 3.6 seconds before touchdown, when the aircraft was at a height of 50 feet, the indicated airspeed was 145. The ground speed was 112. The rate of descent had increased to 1,114 feet per minute. That's higher than it probably should be. The enhanced ground proximity warning system, Oral Alert 50, sounded to indicate the aircraft was 50 feet above ground, which is a standard call-out. 1 second later, 2.6 seconds before touchdown, the EGBWS, or EGBWS, alert sync rate sounded, indicating a high rate of descent. The aircraft's indicated airspeed was 136, its ground speed was 111, and the rate of descent had remained at about 1,100 feet per minute. The bank angle increased to a 4.7 degree right bank. The engine thrust was steady at approximately 43% N1. 1.6 seconds before touchdown, the aircraft's indicated airspeed was 136 and its ground speed was 111. The aircraft was slightly below the glide slope, but on the visual segment of the approach and tracking the runway centerline. The rate of descent had increased to 1,072 feet per minute, and the bank angle was 5.9 degrees to the right. Less than 1 second before touchdown, the aircraft's indicated airspeed was 134, ground speed 111, the bank angle was 7.1 to the right, and the pitch attitude was 1 degree nose up. The rate of descent was recorded as 1,110 feet per minute. The right main landing gear contacted the runway. The aircraft was in a 7.5 degree bank to the right with 1 degree of nose up pitch and 3G vertical acceleration. Yeah, I did not misstate that. 3G vertical acceleration. That's a lot, at a rate of descent of approximately 1,098 feet per minute. Typically, when we come in for landing, we flare, we break that descent rate to something 300 feet per minute or less, I would say, is something that the airplanes are designed for, as far as, the ruggedness of the landing gear and all the pieces on the airplane. At touchdown, the following occurred. The side stay that is attached to the right main landing gear fractured. The landing gear folded into the retracted position. The wing root fractured between the fuselage and the landing gear, and the wing detached from the fuselage, releasing a cloud of jet fuel which caught fire. The exact sequence of these events is still to be determined by further examination of the fractured surfaces. The aircraft then began to slide along the runway. The fuselage slid down runway 23, rolling to the right until it became inverted. A large portion of the tail, including most of the vertical stabilizer and the entire horizontal stabilizer, became detached during the roll. The aircraft went off the right side of the runway into the snow-covered grass area and came to a rest on runway 15 left, near the intersection with runway 23, about 75 feet beyond the right edge of runway 23. The right wing, including the right main landing gear, became fully detached from the aircraft and slid approximately 215 feet further along runway 23. Once the aircraft came to a stop and evacuation began, all occupants evacuated the aircraft. At the time of the writing of this preliminary report, it has been confirmed that 21 of the 80 occupants were injured. 2 of those occupants were reported to have serious injuries. Are you with us, Steffen?
Yes, I'm with. I'm just trying to. Where are we right now? Is the show already running? Are we live?
The show's over. We're just hanging out. No, I'm just kidding.
It's just the after party.
I like that.
We had. I just read the preliminary report, or was I still in the middle of it?
You're still
You're in the middle of it.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
What?
We just touched the runway.
But tell
It's
him,
gonna be a
tell him
the
yes, the
fourth
show is
news
the show is underway.
Yeah, 01C2.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
I
good.
want to too. And we're just finishing off the
Good.
verbiage.
Yeah, but he lost where he was, so I think he's gonna have to start from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to start all over. No, I'm just kidding. I talked about the serious injuries, and then then it goes on to talk about personnel information. I don't know if there's anything that we didn't already know regarding
you covered that. Yep.
And some data about the weather, the winds. Let's see, following the occurrence, a special aerodrome routine meteorological report for Charlie Yankee Zulu issued at 14:32 indicated the following: winds from 270 degrees true at 20 knots, gusting to 32. So it was like a 12-knot gust factor there. 6 miles visibility and blowing snow. Runway visual range for 24 left, variable between 2,600 and more than 6,000 feet with a downward trend. Okay, so things were kind of, getting, the visibility was decreasing. All right. And let's see, I'm just scrolling through here. So, as usual with preliminary reports, they state a lot of the things that that have already been revealed in various other reportings of the incident or accident. And they don't, of course, come up with the reason why these things happened, the probable causes and that sort of thing don't happen until the final report is issued. We do, Liz, were you showing some of the photos when I was reading some of that?
I didn't know quite what order to do these in, but yeah.
Yeah, I just put them in the order that they're in the preliminary report, but we
That's
saw
a
some
diagram of the landing gear.
Yeah, the landing gear diagram, and we see the structure of looks like the wing box, or the spar, perhaps. I don't know. There's something that it looks like
That
very
strut
heavy
thing,
metal.
yeah.
With lots of rivets and stuff like that in it. Maybe Camacho can kind of talk about some of these pictures. Of course, the one that's really interesting is the picture that they took of the upside down inverted aircraft with the baggage lining the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we had kind of talked a little bit about this, after it first happened, and the miracle that everybody got out, especially with the thing being upside down. But you can see in this photo, thank you, Liz, that because the ceiling when the airplane is upright is not really a super tall ceiling. It doesn't look like there was much distance between where the heads of the passengers would have been and when they released their seatbelts. It doesn't look like it's a big drop. But they did say that a number of injuries were caused by that action. I don't know. This pic that Liz is showing now shows that the evacuation doors that they used for the evacuation. Looks like there must have been something wrong with the forward right overwing exit after the crash, but they were able to use the aft overwing exit on the right side and the front.
Wouldn't those be underwing exits at that point?
Oh, that would be the underwing. Yes,
point.
very good point. I don't know. Is that I don't.
There's no wing.
No, there's no wing there. So it's like nowhere near the wing exit.
Side exit.
Side exit.
Side door.
Side door. Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think, guys? Anything? Well, it's kind of as we kind of suspected, just based on that video that the Learjet pilot took, where it came down, and we go, okay, it's time to flare. Okay, no flare. Bam, and 3 Gs. I mean, that's something that really kind of stuck out in my mind, because a lot of these, these bounces and really hard landings that we've talked about in the past of other airliners, when they reach like 1.6, 1.7, they do considerable damage to the airplane. And this is like almost double that amount of.
And also it's focused entirely on one single strut, one single gear strut. So all of that force went right into a single assembly, which I think helped with that failure.
Yeah. I think you're right, because if they mention, I think that's the point of them mentioning the bank angle, the right bank angle, when they impacted. If they had somehow were able to, level the wings just long enough for both mains to touch down, even if it had been 3 Gs, there's I think a good possibility that there probably would have been damage for sure, but I don't think that any wings would have fallen off. But being all in that one pressure point, good point there. AJ.
I was going to highlight the fact that the approach had been nicely stabilized. They knew there was going to be some gusts, and I don't know about you guys, but with experience, if you get a positive speed increase during a gust, particularly when you're close to the ground, I'm always expecting that to disappear and me to get the opposite of that, the negative one. So I'm always prepared for plus 10 here in 100 feet. That's going to be taken away from me. So I usually don't try and correct for a gust. And as you're coming close to the runway as well, I'm never that worried, because you can usually, particularly with a strong headwind, you can usually cope with a bit of additional airspeed, because your ground speed is nice and low, and that you're not going to need a lot of braking to stop the aircraft. I'm a little concerned, but we got a relatively junior first officer flying the aircraft at the time. I'm a little bit concerned with the 64% M1 had been a nice stabilized approach power, but when they got that gust and the speed rose, the power came all the way back to 43% and never moved. So all the rest of that approach, they're pretty much at idle. And of course, the speed starts to drop, and when the rate of descent starts to build, as it will do if you don't do anything else, like increase the pitch or whatever. And it increased to what for this aircraft would have been an extremely high rate of descent, over 1,000 feet a minute. I read further on that the undercarriage struts are only designed to accept a landing rate of descent of just over 700 feet a minute. And they have got over 1,100 feet a minute rate of descent. That would be really worrying. You ought to have little alarm bells going off now, because with the reduced airspeed, you're going to have reduced control effectiveness when you come to the flare. You're also going to have reduced lift from the wing. So when you do flare, not a lot's going to happen. And lo and behold, not a lot happened, along with the wing drop, which you're quite right, put all that on one undercarriage leg, and it well exceeded its capability of absorbing that impact.
Very good points made there. That's just classic fundamentals of flying big airplanes when you're in these kind of wind conditions, especially with a strong headwind and in this case a quartering crosswind and gusty crosswind, and just accept the increase and don't go chasing the airspeed. It's not the time to do it. And also a very, very good point is the fact that the ground speed is significantly less when you have wind conditions like this, and so you don't have to be so concerned about the length, the landing distance, and all of that kind of thing. You just accept the fact that the speed's going to be a little bit higher, and that's going to be working for you, not against you. And if you chase the airspeed. It's possible you can get into a what do we like to call it, behind the power curve or behind the thrust required curve, and once that happens, you're kind of along for the ride. Steffen, do you have anything to add about that, sir? I mean, not that you have any experience in flying airliners, but just in case.
No, not at all. It's I mean, I haven't just jumped in. I haven't read the so intense like you did it. So they got a little winch here, and do you know what time frame it was? They got these increase in speed and the increase of rate. Was it as a very short notice? Or does it say anything? Or
this happened like below 175 feet above the ground, between. Yeah, but
usually you can feel it and you know how to react. Maybe Captain Nick is right that the reaction, as far as I understood, it was not very appropriate. But I have different question. But that's probably later on to the doors and why they're not open and to the slides. But that I don't know if it fits that topic right now.
I don't think it has slides on this one, Steffen, because the as I love quoting now, because I only found this fact out a few shows ago. If the bottom of the door is less than 6 feet from the ground, you're not required to fit slides to that airliner. And I think that's the situation with the this machine.
It doesn't have any slides.
Well,
okay.
No.
Nope.
Oh, okay, good.
But the bottom of the door was probably more than 6 feet off the ground at that point.
Well, I'm not sure they.
What about the top
that's part
of
of
the
the
door?
certification process.
But the top
Good
of the
point,
door.
actually. All right, the top of the door. No, that doesn't work. Yeah.
But I think the doors on the left side were closed because the wings were missing there. Maybe there was fire, and they said keep closed during the evacuation. So that's why all the doors on one side were closed.
I think
intentionally.
the right wing is what the one that came off, I think. And
where's my left?
Okay, yeah, the other left.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that at this point, I think they were just passengers were going, I just need to find a hole to get out of this thing.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't care where
But
it is.
I have a question because I discussed that with a friend of mechanical of mine. What happens if a airliner with slides turns around and you have to open the door in armed position? The slides they will still drop out from the casket in the door. Will they activate? I mean, usually they activate when they're falling down and along the fuselage, and then the weight is activating the mechanism so that they're going to inflate. That's basic, very common principle to do that. But what happens if the airplane, like this one, is on its back, and then the doors are open? The slide will be hanging in from the ceiling. Will it still inflate? Will it block the aisle then, the exit? That's an interesting question. Well, maybe for me at least, maybe you know the reason, you know what happened, but
I don't know.
what will happen in a
That's a
big
good
air?
question.
Yeah.
Well,
Camacho,
all my
you have any
experience of getting off bouncy castles, I can inform you that you wouldn't be a problem. I think you'd be able to squeeze around that slide. But you have to jump because there's no slide to slide down, so you're going to have to bear the impact of a jump. But I mean, I've had friends of mine ask, surely there should be some procedure for this, and I'm going,
very rarely.
well, just let's think about this. We've got an aircraft that's skidding around the airport on its ceiling, upside down, fire everywhere. There've been all sorts of crashes. If you think of all the different ways an airplane can crash, no one's ever going to dream up a procedure for every single one. It's best to just look at the situation you're in and work it out. If a cabin crew is clever enough to go, we're upside down, the slide's going to block the exit, I'll disarm it before I try and open the door, I think you give her a damn medal.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. Hey, but the good news is that if it's raining or snowing, then you have a nice roof.
You do indeed. Yeah.
And then probably a lawyer will come and say, hey, no, that was wrong. You were acting against the procedure.
Well, that's sadly true.
Yeah. And there were still messy passengers. I just saw the picture with all the luggage on the ground, but they didn't take it off it. I mean, now everything is still laying. No, I'm sorry. I didn't want to. I was making a joke.
I think those slides would be blowing around in the wind like those things on the used car lots, like those big
Yeah.
The other
Balloon
slides might
things,
well
yeah.
have blown around.
Yeah.
You're quite right.
Flailing arm, inflated
But
men.
since there weren't any, we will
There
never
weren't any,
know.
so we don't have to worry about it, right?
Metro Doc's asking a
Metro
question.
Doc in our live chat says, "Don't slides detach to become rafts?" Oh yeah, they
you've
can.
You've got to pull a wire though to disconnect it from the aircraft. Disconnect it from the girt bar, as it is commonly referred, because it girts something.
Well, I think Gert was the flight attendant's name that invented that whole thing.
Oh, good old Gert.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
But yeah, that would be now up at the ceiling, so it wouldn't be
Yep.
particularly easy to get to. Normally, it's down there at floor level, and there's you lift a Velcro and then pull the red toggle, and the slide detaches. Yes.
Yep.
Well, we'll see what the
All right.
final says.
Yeah, we'll keep our eyes and ears open for the final report on this one. But I think we should continue on with this from the New York Times. Let's see. A state senator didn't use runway lights before fatal crash. U.S. says. U.S. Us? We? Doug Larson of North Dakota, his wife, and 2 of their children were killed in 2023 when the plane he was piloting crashed in Utah. Mr. Larson was most likely disoriented by the lack of light, investigators said. Okay, we talked about this shortly after it occurred in Moab, Utah. Let's see, the name of the airport that they took off from was Canyonlands. Let's see, a 2023 plane crash that killed a senator from North Dakota, his wife, and 2 of their children. Okay, we just basically repeated what I just read. The senator, Doug Larson, 47, was flying the single-engine plane on October 1st, 2023, when it crashed just after takeoff from the Canyonlands Regional Airport, over 200 miles southeast of Salt Lake City. In a report released on Thursday, investigators with the NTSB said it appeared that Mr. Larson had not used the pilot-controlled runway lights and had turned off the airplane's landing light immediately after takeoff. Unable to see in the darkness, Mr. Larson most likely lost his bearings, investigators said. Moments later, the small plane struck a hill and then crashed into another hill, killing all 4 people. The crash took place just before 8:30 p.m. near the desert recreation town of Moab, Utah, where Mr. Larson had stopped to refuel the plane after visiting family members in Scottsdale, Arizona. The plane took off in the dark, nighttime conditions, was flown into an area with little ambient light. At the time of the takeoff, the full moon had not yet risen completely above the horizon, so very low lighting conditions here. A witness and video evidence confirmed that Mr. Larson had used neither the pilot-controlled runway lights nor the airplane's landing light, although I'm not sure about that last part because there was another witness statement that said that he could see the airplane's landing light being turned off shortly after takeoff. Anyway, the landing light, which is sometimes used at night during takeoff, according to the report. A local operator told investigators that its pilots did not usually use the runway used by Mr. Larson because it is too dark. Now, I don't know exactly what they mean by that. Is the runway is too dark, or it's not good to use when it's too dark outside? I'm not sure. Let's see. Shortly after takeoff, the plane took what the witness described as a steep and descending 180-degree right turn. The plane then struck a hill, continued for about 540 feet, and struck a second hill. Before the crash, Mr. Larson had been briefed on the weather conditions, but that briefing did not contain information about the moonrise and illumination. The Federal Aviation Administration advises pilots using the landing light at night during takeoff to turn it off only once the climb is well established. It's likely that the pilot neither had adequate visual references after takeoff nor monitored the airplane's flight instruments appropriately to detect the airplane's descent, the federal investigators said in the report. There did not appear to be any mechanical issues with the plane. Let's see. Mr. Larson's logbook showed that he had flown more than 44 hours at night, including a flight of more than 3 hours just days before this crash. He had more than 1,700 hours of experience in military helicopters, but no record of fixed-wing experience with the North Dakota Army National Guard, of which he was a member. Okay. So I looked at the the information on Sky Vector for this airport, Canyonlands, and indeed the airport or that runway does have runway end identifier lights, and I think medium intensity runway edge lights, and they are controlled by pilot controlled lighting on the CTAF, the Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. I'm not sure why he didn't use that, the lighting. He could have, if he were on CTAF. I'm sure he was reporting his takeoff and departure on that runway at Canyonlands. I don't know, what the exact ambient lighting situation was at the time. Maybe he didn't feel it was necessary to have the runway lights eliminated at that point. But just sounds to me like a loss of control issue. And I don't know, it didn't mention that I could recall that if he was an instrument-rated pilot or VFR only. But it is tricky when you go from daylight to nighttime, especially if you're just not just, but if you're a VFR certified pilot and not an instrument-rated pilot. What do you guys think?
Where that airport is the absolute middle of nowhere. There is, I can't see anything. I'm looking on the satellite map, and I don't see for miles and miles any evidence of there being a light of any sort. So it's flying at night, especially with zero reference, is just as bad, if not worse, than flying in instrument conditions, because you may see just a little hint of something. It's a little bit of information, but it's not enough to actually give you a reference point, but you still try to rely on it because you're in visual conditions.
Good point.
Yeah, I'm just a bit bemused as to why on earth he would throw away what lighting he could have. And I'm also bemused why there's a suggestion that he was planning to use visual references. Sounds to me like it was a pretty dark night. The moon had yet to rise. The sun had set. He was taking off into what was considered a runway. When they say it's a dark runway, I often think, well, it's got the kind of black hole effect at the end of the runway, perhaps because the runway goes off into a really pitch black area, and that's often an area where you've really got to concentrate, get on your instruments and work at that instrument flying to climb away, because there are so few visual references. I'm a bit bemused in lots of ways. He obviously became disorientated. Now, forgive me, one of you guys is going to be able to remind me, I hope. But when I was doing my PPL, like way back, I remember an instructor telling me that if you've got an instrument, an artificial horizon, or attitude indicator, that is powered by suction, he said it's common that if the suction isn't quite good enough to get the gyro up to speed, as you get airborne, it will fail, and it will often put you into you'll think you're flying straight and level, but it will actually be you'll be doing a right-hand turn. Now, I'm trying to remember what function that was. Was that a bit of precession in the gyro, or what that might have do that if it was under speeding? So does that ring a bell with anyone? Perhaps not.
That doesn't ring a bell with me.
No.
Okay. I'm going to continue to look.
On a basic level, I think Camacho can probably back me up on this. The slower that gyro is spinning, the less stable it is. So if you're getting less than ideal suction, you would be losing reliability on that instrument. But also to point out, VFR at night, you're not required to even have an artificial horizon, which I think is a terrible idea. But
Correct. Yeah, all this guy needed to fly at night were navigation lights and anti-collision lights.
That's it.
Wow. Okay.
Not
pretty impressive.
Not to say that that's a good idea.
Yes.
Especially in the area that he's flying, right? That's the thing that kind of intrigued me, is that the runway light, like not using the runway lights is a bit peculiar, but like AJ said, once you get past the end of the runway, there's just no man-made references out there. There's no additional lights. So I don't know how impactful having the runway lights on would have been for him. And, like what you were saying, Nick, regarding like failing an instrument early on in the flight or early in the climb, that would be one thing that a VFR pilot would not be able to, or a VFR pilot would be less likely to notice or comprehend, because they're not doing when you're flying on instruments, you have your prescribed scan and you're basically cross-checking each instrument against each other. But, when you're a VFR pilot and all you're doing is looking out the window, and you maybe understand how to read the attitude indicator, but you may not have a prescribed scan where you're backing it up with anything. So as that attitude indicator starts to fail or starts to lean or something, you're not necessarily, cross-checking it with your directional gyro or the VSI or anything. So it does seem like it would be easier to follow a failing instrument.
This kind of reminds me a little bit of, I know it's not exactly the same, but the JFK Jr. Flying over the Long Island Sound, and it was technically visual meteorological conditions at the time, but there was no discernible or very little discernible horizon for him to use as a reference. And as you guys just mentioned, it's not a requirement to have an artificial horizon on the airplane, and nor is it a requirement to be instrument rated to be flying in those conditions. But that just, really, when I recall that incident, that accident, I'm thinking, man, that guy was in all kinds of hurt there, because, your primary reference is your eyeballs looking outside for these visual references, and they were almost non-existent. Those are almost,
Does it say somewhere how the airplane was equipped? I know it was a PA-28, wasn't it? But how was it instrument-wise? How was it equipped? And,
I don't know.
And you're right about the light. I'm sorry, Alpha Juliet, that if you have at night, you have only one single light orientating you. It keeps on moving around in your airspace. You don't have any reference. If you try to orientate only on 2-3 lights, they start to fling around. And if you pick up a star even during the turn, you might take the star then as orientation, and then that's over. I mean, that's what you say. It's like Kennedy Jr. crash.
Yeah, having too little information is almost worse than having no information.
Yeah. It's there happened crash where there was only the beacon of the airport left, and when you're running, when you approach, that's now a landing accident. But if you're flying to an airport which has runway lighting, but you cannot really see it from the side because all the lights are oriented in landing or takeoff direction, and it only has a beacon left over, you're orientating. Many crash because they look at the beacon, and this beacon starts floating around in your mind, and you're lost.
Oh yeah, Steffen, I really remember when we used to go with our aviation doctors for our sort of annual decompression and things. They had all sorts of tricks, and they would put you in a black box which was on gimbals, and so it could be spun in any angle. And they would illuminate just a single light in front of you, whoever's in the box. And then they would have to stare at that light and try and use their senses to stay wings level, to keep the box on a level axis. And everyone roll onto their backs, because your eye induces movement in that light that isn't there. It's just the natural flickering of your eyeball. And as a result, in your attempts to keep it what you think is the middle, you're actually turning the airplane. And this was exactly what you are describing. When you look at a single source, if you try and fixate on it and fly in reference to it, because there's nothing else to give you an indication of pitch or bank or anything, you will inevitably roll onto your back. It's it's quite dramatic. Very good demonstration.
Well, here's a good question from Neil in our live chat. When you're training for basic VFR only private pilot, how much training do you get on what to do if you find yourself in an unusual situation where you would only have your instruments for reference?
3 hours.
Well, 3 hours for night. So if we're it's kind of two questions at one, right? So at night, your requirements are 3 hours of night flight training and a 100 nautical mile cross country at night. And then you also have to have 10 takeoffs and landings, all within that 3 hours, which can be done. Instrument training is a little bit more, not a lot more. I believe it's another. Do you remember off the top of your head? I was actually just trying to look it up what the minimum was. I think it's.
I don't know.
I want to say it's 3 or 4 hours of instrument, or maybe it's just you have to cover a couple of things. But it's suffice to say it's not much at all.
How about in Germany?
Very minimal.
We have a flight instructor in Germany, Dr. Steff.
Maybe
No,
he is.
Captain Steffen. Oh, is he a doctor?
No.
I don't know.
No.
Doctor of flight.
I think for normal PPR, you have to have 1 hour of kind of basic instrument flying under the HUD, but no matter if you fly day or night. For night, you have to have 5 hours at night flying and also some instrument training and flying in dark areas. We don't have any cross-country training requirement in Germany, I think.
Because you'd be in another country if you did that.
Yeah.
Crossing another country.
That's why they call it cross country.
I guess
Exactly.
so. Yeah, I always wondered about that over here. You know, you fly for a long, long time and you haven't crossed any other country
Yeah.
other than the U.S. It's
It's in the U.S. It's cross county.
cross county. Yeah, good point. Or
Yeah,
cross state.
so-
One other thing I've noticed, Canada actually has to fly at night, you have a special rating that is on top of your regular private pilot's license, private pilot certificate. You have a night rating that's before you get your instrument rating. So in Canada, you get your private pilot certificate. You cannot fly at night unless you're with an instructor.
Same in Europe.
And in the States, it's 3 hours of night flight training in a single engine airplane. Like AJ said, 1 cross country flight, 10 takeoffs and landings. And then additionally 3 hours of flight training in a single engine airplane. This is for a private pilot. On the control and maneuvering of an airplane solely by reference to instruments, including straight and level flight, constant airspeed, climbs and descents, turns to a heading, recovery from unusual flight attitudes, radio communications, and the use of navigation systems and facilities and radar services appropriate to instrument flight.
But didn't this gentleman have like 1,500 hours on military
But he had it in helicopters.
Yeah, mostly helicopter.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, it's very. They must have involved some instrument flying.
Yeah,
while they were
yeah.
doing
I'm sure
that.
he knew how to read instruments, but it also, it is perplexing.
Yeah,
Sadly, it cost 4 lives.
very sad.
Well, Liz is telling us that we should probably end the news segment with this regarding a turtle. And she said, well, this is significant for you, Jeff, because you used to be a turtle, living in a shell in the RVS, having my
your
house
house
with me
around.
everywhere I went. Okay, the Transportation Safety Administration, this is from Paddle Your Own Canoe. Yay.
Yeah, yay.
What's a show without an article from Paddle Your Own
Gotta
Canoe?
do it.
The Transportation Safety Administration made a rather unusual discovery while giving someone a pat-down search at Newark Liberty International Airport. We all love those. Last Friday, after the passenger pulled a turtle out of the front of their pants.
That's a big turtle.
Were we sure it was a turtle? Usually accustomed to finding firearms, knives, and drugs, one can only imagine the look on the face of the TSA when the passenger handed over the roughly, it's only a 5-inch turtle that he had tried to smuggle through the security checkpoint. The TSA was first alerted to something suspect when the passenger passed through the body scanner, activating an alarm for a potentially concealed weapon around the groin area. Okay. The unlikely TSA officer.
Maybe it was a snapping turtle.
Oh, it could. I hope it was not a snapping turtle.
that
The
would make it a
unlucky
weapon.
TSA officer who was assigned the job of patting down the passenger found a larger bulge than anticipated. Wow. Is that a turtle or are you just happy to see me?
Exactly.
Around the man's groin and asked the passenger if he was hiding something. At this point, yes, my desire for you, sir. At this point, the man voluntarily reached into his pants and pulled out the small turtle, which was wrapped in a blue blanket. Oh, little blue blanket.
I guess it was little boy turtle.
Passenger, little boy, yeah, I love it. The passenger claimed the turtle was a red ear slider turtle. Yeah, Yeah, everybody knows
There
that.
you go.
According to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the rear ear slider isn't native to the U.S., but the
Red
species
ear?
is controlled.
Red ear?
I'm sorry, the red ear, red ear slider isn't native to the United States, but the species is controlled because it's considered an invasive species that competes with native turtles for food and habitat. Praising the TSA officer who had to search the passenger, Federal Security Director for New Jersey, Thomas Carter, commented, "I commend our officer who conducted the pat-down in a very professional manner in an effort to resolve the alarm. We've seen travelers try to conceal knives and other weapons on their person, in their shoes, luggage. However, I believe this is the first time we've come across someone who is concealing a live animal down the front of his pants." Well, that seems to happen a lot out in the Pacific, right? Don't we have a bunch of... We've had a few stories like that in the past, people trying to smuggle in reptiles and all kinds of animals.
Metro Doc has a question.
Metro Doc has a question in our live chat. Was the turtle packing? Or maybe, no, the passenger was packing the turtle.
The turtle.
Yeah. Anyway, well, that's interesting. It goes on to talk about in this article, a Taiwanese man back in 2023 was busted at Bangkok's airport after trying to smuggle a prairie dog and 2 otters in his pants. Well,
that's
must
incredible.
have very large pants.
Yes.
Anyway,
pantaloons.
I think you missed one of the most important comments in here, though. The Carter added, "As best we could tell, the turtle was not harmed by the man's actions." I don't know if they covered emotionally, though.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
Does anybody really know how the emotional attributes
of turtles?
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
I mean,
well, that
couldn't he
ends. Yes.
Couldn't you have carried it normally? Is it forbidden to have a turtle on board?
That particular kind of turtle, yes.
Oh,
yeah, but who would notice? It was like one that
he probably would have
was
gotten away with it. Put it in a turtle carrier and called it his emotional support turtle.
Yeah,
golden.
Yep.
That's where he made the mistake. He shouldn't have tried to hide it in his pants, unless he was just into having turtles in his pants. Could be. Okay. With that,
or maybe he was using it as a protector. Like water guys who playing water ball in the water when they, you know this sport. When they play
water polo.
Water polo, I think we call it. Yeah.
They have groin protectors.
They have groin protectors, yeah, that's right.
Same on cricket boxes. You have a box that you put around your bits when you're a cricketer.
And baseball, you wear a cup as well, right?
Yeah.
I think.
Lots of sports.
Batting? Maybe
hockey,
not.
for sure.
Or hockey. I don't know. Hey, this is not a sports show. Let's
move
on to getting to know
guys.
us. Time of the show where we get to know what everybody's been up to between episodes. And let's see. Who would like to go first? Steffen.
Oh, okay. Well, again, thank you for letting me in your show, and I'm sorry for running late. I was flying today. I was flying the whole week. We had a very nice...
That's a long flight.
Yes.
Several cross country.
No, we have right now very beautiful weather here in Germany, at least for 1 week. Clear sky all day, and the winter's over finally. We had low clouds the whole winter, basically. I had to cancel 7 meetings with students for going flying, but now we make it up all in 1 week, and so I'm very happy. I just come back from a nice night flight, by the way, with a airplane fully equipped with a working artificial horizon. So when you were telling that, how can you fly at night without an artificial horizon? I don't get it, how you can try to do that. Prior that to I was, as you mentioned in the last show before, I took a short visit in Doha, as you said, I wear your hat, carrying it around. And like you mentioned that Doha is not from the from the UAE. It's an old country. It's from Qatar, and it's an old country. It's very little, and it even last time it even had the World Soccer Championship in this country, which everybody is scratching their head. Why this country, which has no relationship to soccer at all, getting a whole championship in this country, but I think it has nothing to do with lots of money. I think I don't.
Oh no.
Well, that's about me. That's I'm happy flying. Was flying a lot and doing instrument training and everything. Was fun.
Yeah, well, I wonder if we have any listeners in Qatar. If we do, I apologize for making that mistake. But I'm going to blame it on Liz because she's the one that told me in my ear that it was United Arab Emirates, and I just took her word for it. So anyway.
And it wasn't really warm, by the way. I mean, it was only 24 degrees Celsius. The water is only 19 degrees Celsius. I don't translate that in other units.
That's like 68, 66 degrees temperature for water and about 75, 77 Fahrenheit air temperature.
Yeah.
That's very pleasant.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Steffen, we've got similar temperature to you, I expect, today. I've been walking around in shorts.
Yeah. Very nice, but it's dropping to freezing at night again. So it's because it's still March, you know.
Yeah, it's going to be just above freezing here in Roswell tonight. So it's going to be a cold start to spring here in the southeast. All right, thank you, sir. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
For being here.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to join us.
Yeah.
Again on short notice. All right. Let's see. AJ, Alpha Juliet. What have you been hired yet, sir? That's the most important.
No, not yet. No,
Yeah?
still hitting the bricks. But have been doing a little bit of flying this week. Had one of our aircraft get stranded out at an airport, so had a couple of rescue missions involved in getting that airplane back. And been making plans for Sun and Fun upcoming, so that should be a lot of fun.
Okay. When does that start officially? Sometime early April?
It's April 1st through the 7th, I believe, is the official dates.
Okay.
I'm going to be up there on the March 31st, which is that Monday, probably through Friday.
Okay. Have not yet decided if that will fit in my schedule this year. I'm definitely planning on Oshkosh, but perhaps I've never been to Sun and Fun. I'd like to try it one of these
You
years.
need some fun.
I do need some
In the
fun.
sun.
And some
And I
sun.
need some sun.
Yeah.
That sounds like a perfect place for both of those things.
Well,
All right. Anything else, sir?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just
Okay.
living every day.
Yeah. Living the dream.
Camacho.
All right. Camacho man.
Yeah. Same with me. I was able to do a little bit of flying in the past week. Our weather has also been a little enigmatic. I think it was about 80 or 82 degrees on Monday, and then Wednesday morning it was snowing. And we had a day where the airport was reporting winds of 39 gusting to 58, I think. I think I sent that to a few of you.
That's
Yeah,
windy.
you did send it.
But
Yeah.
it was so windy that the sky was like brown from all the dust blowing. It looked like it looked like a scene from alien movies where like the alien ship is coming in and
Wow.
The Dust Bowl. I think I even heard on the news here, it was probably national news, that the dust storms were causing like some major accidents on interstate highways and
there
stuff.
was a huge accident on I-70 up in northern Kansas. Where it was like a 20 or 40 car pileup. So yeah, it was a pretty bad deal.
Yikes.
So yeah.
You're
Glad you weren't there.
going to be home for a while before you have to do some more traveling?
I am home for a few more weeks.
Good.
I am going to try to get one or two more flights in on the Luscombe, and then it turns into a pumpkin at the end of this month. So we will start working on the annual for that thing. Hopefully have a relatively stress-free annual with no issues.
Yeah.
We will see on that. And then
How's the Debonair doing?
And the Debonair's doing good. I need to start putting more hours on it to get the engine braking complete, but I'm hoping with spring coming, as long as the wind stays at a manageable level, I should be able to get some consistent flying coming up here. So that'll be good.
All right. Good. Good to hear. Okay. Captain Nick, you're up.
Hi. I explained last week, I think. I've got a few talks. So last night I was up at the Royal Aeronautical Society at the lovely museum at Brooklands, and I gave them what I think will probably be my last, except that as I left the stage, the lovely guy, John, who was had introduced me and said thank yous at the end, said, of course, there are an awful lot of ex-Virgin Atlantic engineers here, so we would love you to come back and tell us all about your airline flying. Oh, for heaven's sake.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, anyway. And you remember Rob Simmons, the lovely headmaster of the school in London? Well, he's joded me to go over there and speak to his aviation
We love
society
you,
there.
Captain Nick.
And lovely kids. And he wants a talk on the benefits or otherwise of a military pilot versus a civil pilot. So I prepared a little talk for them for next week, which will keep me busy. And the only problem I'm having is I've got a really bad neck from my years pulling lots of G and turning my head round through 360 degrees, like the girl in The Exorcist, if you've seen that movie. Yeah. And all these vertebrae are pretty worn. So when I work and look at screens or look down at the keyboard or whatever, it doesn't take long before I start getting, really stiff shoulders and cramps and lots of neck pain. And it's been really bad this week. So I don't know. I just don't know how to fix that. And I think it's just the thing about getting old because I've popped a tendon, ripped a tendon in probably what is my hamstring, except it's happening around the back of my knee, because I know your hamstring, actually, it goes a long way up your leg. And I've damaged it 3 times in a row, and this is really painful now. So I spent the whole damn morning queued up in our local small injuries clinic and hobbled in. And I got given short shrift, really, which was a bit of a shame. I got told to slather it in Voltarol? No, and anti-inflammatory anyway, cream, and arrest it, which I've been doing it for like 3 months since I first started having this problem. So I don't know. I'm going to have
I think an amputation is in order.
Yeah, Liz thinks I ought to have it chopped off. I'd get more sympathy, I think, if I had it chopped off.
There you go.
Yeah,
have a peg leg and get a parrot.
Exactly right. So that's me. I'm in agony, and I've got to go and talk to some kids next week. So
they'll cheer you up.
Well, speaking of those kids, I love those kids. I don't know why.
We love you, Captain Jeff.
Oh, thank you.
Found it.
There they are.
Yes. That's Rob's fabulous little school. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cover art.
Cover art,
Oh,
sir.
cover art, yes. Well, we ended up with quite a few good suggestions. So we were talking about a squirrely plane situation. Phenom anal was one that came up, and I thought that was a bit rude. Talking about rosary beads, well, I try to keep off the religious thing. But we did get onto the subject of voodoo. And I'm not quite sure how. Can anyone remember?
Something about a flight to Haiti, I think. And that was the guy that was eating the rosary beads.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Haiti voodoo. Mm-hmm. And, of course, that made me think about the voodoo fighter. And so, and, of course, the voodoo doll is covered in...
pins, needles.
Yeah, well, it's made of sort of rough, coarse material like sackcloth.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I created a sort of a voodoo fighter. It kind of looks voodoo-ish, I think. Mm-hmm. It's kind of got triangular intakes and a T-tail and whatever, made of sackcloth. And, of course, I've stuck some pins in it, which is rather good. And someone came up with the title. It wasn't me. I'm trying to remember who it was. Perhaps Neil or someone. I can't remember.
Neil or Tim.
Neil or Tim, yeah.
Or maybe
I'd rather voodoo, but I'd rather voodoo-don't, which I thought was a great title. That was brilliant. So
and you added a squirrel.
And, yeah, we got a squirrel in there, which I'm sure Liz will find when she moves up. Here we go. They inside the intake. Yeah, there's a squirrel there. And, of course, in that shadow, you can see the show logo, which is there in the shadow on the sound.
Where it belongs.
Yeah. And if you were looking for the show number, then look underneath the voodoo, and it's there scratched in the sand.
Oh, there it is.
654.
Very good.
Very
So
good.
that was their art for last week.
Awesome.
Very good, Nick.
Loved it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Let's go
sorry.
back to, there we go.
Captain Jeff.
Oh, yeah, me. Let's see. Let me get to my cheat sheet show notes because I always forget something. Yeah, so I did my normal singing over the weekend, last weekend. And on Sunday, I was invited by my choir director to accompany her to a concert, a choral slash, what do you call it? The small ensemble, the orchestral, what do you call the groups that are small in number? I can't think of. Anyway, it was like a small orchestra with a very large choir.
Symphonia?
No, not symphonia.
An ensemble?
No, I got that, but I'll think of it at some point. But just not now. Anyway, so I was out there. I arrived, and I one of the things that's a challenge for me with the road vessel studio, the motor coach, is finding good parking, spaces or a place for this thing to fit. And so I decided to park it on a not a super busy street, but a kind of somewhat busy small boulevard. And I thought, I'm parallel parked there. It should be fine. And then I walked over and got the tickets for the concert, and I was waiting for the choir director, Jane, to arrive. And I was talking to her on the phone and giving her directions, and I was trying to spot her. And I noticed a couple of ladies walking toward the area that I had parked my car on the street, kind of walking up toward the church. This was at a very large church here in Roswell United Methodist, and they have the chapel out near the street where I was parked. And these ladies are walking down, and they're kind of looking at me, and they stop and they say, "Do you go to this church?" And I said, "No, I'm here for a concert." And she goes, "Oh, okay. Well, we were up at the street. There was an accident involving a van." And I looked at them thinking, you mean, is it like a big van? And they said something about a leisure travel van. I said, "That's my van." And I went, "Oh, okay." So they said, "Yeah, we side-swiped your driver's side mirror." They were driving there were another church, World Harvest Church, in a 15-passenger Ford bus that got a little bit too close to my driver's side view mirror and clipped it enough didn't do a huge amount of damage. There's no body damage or anything to the car or to the RVS. But it knocked the cover of the assembly off and broke some mounting points and that kind of thing. So yeah, that was a little disappointing that it was involved in a little bit of an altercation. The vehicle anyway. These were very pleasant people. No altercation with the humans, and coordinating to get all that fixed. And so
you got the first scratch out of the way.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, actually, the first thing that I did to it, Alpha Juliet, was opening up my door. I think after maybe the fourth or fifth day that I owned the thing, and I opened it up on the fender fender of a trailer parked next to where I was parked, and put a nice little dent in the door. That hurt. That hurt a little bit, but yeah. Anyway, so. Going to be having the mirror fixed by the Mercedes-Benz dealership, and hopefully I'll get reimbursed properly by the.
At least it wasn't a drive-away situation.
It was not a drive-away situation at all. Yeah, they were actually seeking out the owner. It was just kind of very odd, I think, that they just so happened to see me. I just happened to be on the corner and waiting for Jane, and we initiate this conversation, and they found the person that owned the van.
Glad they did.
Yeah, big coincidence, I think. This APG headquarters building here that I'm in is I'm moved in mostly. Still waiting for some furniture to arrive next week and the week after, and that'll be a lot of the stuff that I did order to make it look like a real apartment inside here, and was able to set up my sit-stand desk, which I'm standing at right now, in my second bedroom. And so that's kind of nice to have everything set up, and then I don't have to worry about breaking it down and resetting it up again and that kind of
So
thing.
once it's all furnished, we want an Architectural Digest tour, right?
Oh, well, I don't know. We'll see. When's
the housewarming party?
The housewarming party? I don't know. I look for your invitation in the mail. Definitely have to have a party here at some point. But yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I was going to waive the protection add-on for, and it's quite expensive for this furniture, for like spills and tears and damage to the fabrics of the furniture. But if I have a party, especially if Alpha Juliet shows up, I'm thinking maybe it's worth getting that extra protection. Anyway, so that's it with me.
Extra insurance is always good when I'm around.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
That's it.
You want to talk coffee fund, even though?
Yeah, let's do the coffee fund. And just, but you know what? Let's skip the coffee fund. We don't have any folks that donated between now and the last show. I do apologize. It took me a little bit longer to get the show published last week because of a lot of things happening, including the incident with the RVS. So I got it out a day late. Hopefully that wasn't too inconvenient for everybody out there. And yeah.
Okay, let's do some feedback.
Okay, let's do some feedback, Liz is saying. Okay, get into our feedback mode, and here we go. Bumper is coming right at you.
Captain, incoming message.
We're going to start off with this from Texas Anla'Shok. And I'm the only one here on the panel that knows exactly what that means, his name. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true at all. The title of his feedback, Navy Knows Art, or lack thereof. Greetings, Captain Jeff and APG crew. Another video I felt like sharing is one from Drachenfell. Did I say that right? Who I've shared a few times before whenever he discusses something aviation related. At the end of the week, he does what he calls the dry dock, essentially a Q&A video over videos that had come out previously. And then at the end of the month, he does a Patreon dry dock that has gotten to be so long that he's had to split it into 2 sections that can each clock in at around 2.5 hours. Woo! We thought we were long. In this particular one, he answers a question about the U.S. Navy Marines and nose art. I thought I'd share this because he answers it in a way that I hadn't thought of. So I wanted to see what y'all thought of. Anyway, take care. This is the Texas Anla'Shok signing off.
Texas Anla'Shok asks, reading Masters of the Air, it mentioned that the famous nose art that adorned B-17s and B-24s, etc. in the U.S. Army Air Force was prohibited in the Navy and Marines. Why is that? I think it's actually more the other way around, to be honest, because when you look at the general practice across the board in World War II, the US Army Air Force, particularly the 8th Air Force, is actually quite notable as being pretty much the only one that, by the rules, actually accepts and encourages nose art. The Royal Air Force and the Fleet Air Arm, for example, not particularly great fans of it. For the most part, the Luftwaffe, the Regia Aeronautica, and the Red Air Force also not particularly great fans of it, and of course the US Navy and US Marine Corps aren't either. The USAAF, or USAAF, enough A's, they're the ones who are the exception to the rule by saying, yeah, come on everyone, draw what you like pretty much to encourage morale. And, well, given the kinds of missions the 8th Air Force was flying over Europe, it's no wonder they were kind of like, yeah, we can pretty much give them any morale boosters that we can find. Whereas for the US Navy and US Marine Corps, they stuck with the kind of party line across the board, which was, no, you're not having nose art. We want everything to be within certain standards. And there are probably also a bunch of practical and more prosaic reasons for that as well. Although you might have an assigned aircraft, on carrier operations, if your aircraft is down for maintenance, you might very well be assigned a spare, or in the middle of combat ops, if, say, an aircraft has been recovered damaged but the pilot is injured or dead, and your aircraft is a write-off but you're fine, you might then well be told, well, you're getting in that aircraft because we need all pilots on deck. And, of course, aircraft on a carrier tend to have a lot more maintenance issues. They're much more maintenance intensive than aircraft on land, simply because of the hostile operating environment they're in. So having to swap around from aircraft that you might be allocated to other people's aircraft or spares would be a lot more common. Therefore, while you would have an attachment to your aircraft, it may not be quite as strong as, say, a bomber crew that are only flying in that bomber for dozens of missions on land. And I think on a more prosaic level as well, squadrons at sea, especially US Navy, US Marine Corps squadrons, tend to invest quite a lot in their squadron identifier, their squadron badge, artwork, whatever you want to call it. And obviously later on, especially in peacetime, you might see that displayed quite prominently, either on the tail of an aircraft or as a badge on the side, as opposed to individual pilots' markings. That's less the case perhaps in somewhere like the Fleet's Air Arm or the Royal Air Force, where obviously the squadrons do have badges, but they're not quite as flamboyant as the American ones. But I suspect for the USN and the USMC, it may be that a lot of their energy is going into their group identity as a squadron rather than their individual identity as an aircraft or an aircraft crew, which, again, to a certain degree makes sense, especially when you're contrasting 4-engine heavy bombers that might have 6, 7, 8 or more crew with naval aircraft that are usually one-man aircraft, and even in the case of something like an Avenger, there's only 3 people.
So what do you guys think of the question and answer from this podcast?
Yeah, I hadn't really considered that in terms of Navy airplanes. I mean, it's obviously super common for Air Force airplanes up through like Vietnam to have nose art. And, there are a few prominent Navy markings, but they are, all the ones off the top of my head are kind of squadron-based markings. So I had never even contemplated that, to be honest with you, but his interpretation or his point about it makes sense to me, at least.
Yeah. Sounds like a very knowledgeable guy. Anybody else have any comments?
Did Army Air Force airplanes, World War II type era, did they move between squadrons with their crews less like the Navy?
I don't know.
As I generally understood it, aircraft were allocated to a squadron and stayed with the squadron. So, they didn't move aircraft around, and the crews could move, but I don't think they took their airplanes with them. Certainly, that was the case in the Royal Air Force. No, I think we rather looked down our nose at the
nose art.
No.
Ding.
At the Richthofen wing, who we fought in the First World War, and their overly flamboyant displays that they painted their aircraft like some bunch of circuses. Oh, yeah, that's why they call them the Flying Circus. Yeah, like a bunch of clowns. And I think the Air Force said, "Oh no, we'll stay grumpy and camouflaged," which was exactly what you guys did in the Revolutionary War, when we were prancing around in our beautiful red coats and the big white cross, the straps they wore, and you guys were skulking in the bushes, picking us off.
You were literally wearing a target?
Yeah, exactly, literally. That was the equivalent, I think. But no, I think we were generally more reserved, so we didn't kind of do that thing. But the boys did like putting little indicators on their aircraft, whether it be a personal thing or not. I rather like the idea. I really do. I mean, I seem to remember that Chuck Yeager used to, honor his lady wife on his aircraft, and I thought that was very appropriate. Pardon me, but I felt a bit sorry for the bomber crews. Like, there were 10 guys there, and only one of them got his artwork put on the airplane. So what about the other 9? Didn't they get an input? I don't know.
I guess not. Maybe they voted.
Do you have a rebuttal at all to anything that Captain Steffen, that anything that Captain Nick just said in a derogatory way?
I'm not derogatory.
I'm not a military guy. I told you that. But I think even nowadays, even the German Air Force, they do have. But it's probably the marking of the squadron itself, which is very distinctive, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
But I think they occasionally also have own paintings on individual ones on their airplanes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
Anyway,
did you ever paint the Mad Dog, Jeff?
Did I ever paint the Mad Dog? Well, if you consider spilling coffee all over the place, yes, I did.
Abstract art.
We'll just say he made his mark.
I did make my mark for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you, Texas Anla'Shok, for sending that in.
On the seat cushion, wasn't it, generally?
Yeah, on the seat cushion, and a lot of it went on my white shirt and tie. It seemed to happen to me quite a bit, and I don't know why. But, you get the coffee cup, the paper cup with the plastic lid that is supposed to fit well and not dribble. And then, you're drinking your coffee, and then you go to the lavatory, and you see yourself in the mirror, and you go, what in the world is all over my shirt? Like, just it's supposed to be a white shirt, but it looked splotchy brown several times. Yeah, I'm thinking, I wonder how many of the crew actually noticed this, but just didn't want to say anything to me. Like, yeah, he's old, Don't tell Jeff.
During the championship, usually the soccer championship, which is world event, of course, the whole world, not like the World Series, you play baseball only in America, but the soccer champion. Okay, I'm not back. But we did.
Hey, I did playing baseball in Japan.
Burn.
Yeah. Okay, forgot. I made the middle construction, so I put in the German flags on the window to the left and to the right. I with some cloth and some piece of wood, and I open up the window and hang out the German flag, of course, the German one. And when I closed the window from the 7.3, I pulled the claws, and the flag really got up, and I was having big flags on the outside. Did you do that as well sometimes, like that?
No, that sounds like a great idea. I'd love to do that. Too late.
Yeah. They did it at Oshkosh. Didn't go so well at Oshkosh. Camacho, do you remember what happened with that one?
No.
It was a DC-3. The guy lost the flag, and it went back and hit the prop.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, really?
Oops.
That's right.
That's always a shame. And
that was last year.
Like
wasn't
having that lovely fire engine doing the arc over your aircraft until one of them accidentally uses foam instead of water. Jeff, you were mentioning coffee mugs. Now, this was my actual coffee mug. Good old Starbucks. That worked a treat. And on the side of it, of course, I wrote Nick's mug, white with one sweetener, please. So that was to remind the cabin crew how I like my hot drinks.
Okay.
I love it. Love it.
Very nice. And it was
I
correct.
have to do it. I like to mention I only did that when parking, not when taxiing or anything with my flag. So they don't get stuck in the engine. Okay.
That's a good plan.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's his story, and he's sticking
to it.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, but that generated a lot of good discussion. Thank you again, Captain Texas Anla'Shok. Well, maybe he's a Captain Texas Anla'Shok. Okay. Let's continue on with this from Sean McHale. So his subject is ETOPS. I guess the T in ETOPS doesn't refer to toilets. I'm wondering what he's thinking about here from the NewYorkPost.com. He said, so many jokes to be had here, so little time. The article is Air India flight forced to return to U.S. over clogged toilets in 10-hour debacle, reports. Let's see. This was a crappy flight. Very cute. The journalist gets to joke around a little bit. Passengers aboard an Air India flight to Delhi endured a 10-hour trip to nowhere when the plane was forced to circle back to Chicago because most of the toilets became clogged and inoperable. Air India Flight 126 was making its way over Greenland on March 5th when 8 out of the 12 toilets broke down after passengers flushed bags and rags down the lavatories.
Wow.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. That's worse than throwing change in the engines.
Yeah, I guess it could be worse.
I don't know if I go that far, Liz.
Yeah.
The extended PP dance began nearly 5 hours into the 14-hour trip, according to the FlightAware tracker, forcing the Boeing 777-300ER to head back to Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. Let's see. Upon landing at Chicago, all passengers and crew disembarked normally, have been provided with accommodation to minimize inconvenience, and the accommodations do include working bathrooms, the company said in a statement, citing only a technical issue. I added the part about the working toilets.
That photo in the article is not a 777ER, is it?
It is not. That's a Dreamliner in the photo.
So. Yeah.
But it says Air India on it. Come on, Liz.
I know.
They got that part right.
What
At least it's not an Airbus.
Yeah, I know. I'm very surprised.
You sure?
Well, maybe it is. Is it an Airbus?
Well,
you know what? Oh, you're right. It's a 350.
350?
Yeah.
I can't see the little scalloped back of the engine bit. That's how I.
Yeah. Okay.
Although, doesn't a 350 have 3 wheels on my wagon?
The 350 depends on the model. The 900 does not, and
it's printed on the back of the fuselage. It says Airbus A350-900.
You've got good eyesight.
Well,
or a big
I have
screen.
I just zoomed in.
I was going to say, I can't see that.
Zoom in right in, if you can, zoom in right in front of the tail number. About
I can't.
6 or 8 windows in front, right underneath the emergency exit. Airbus A350-900.
Oh, there you go.
Well, at least
the
it's not
1000 I
curious.
think has the 6 wheels on either bogie, I think.
I'm just curious why the hell they thought they needed to go all the way back to Chicago. I mean, it's not like there isn't a plumber somewhere between where they were in Greenland and Chicago. They could have just stopped off at Halifax or somewhere.
But is there a plumber between Greenland and Chicago that's willing to work on an Air India airplane?
Well, Air India comes to Toronto. They could have gone to Toronto.
It's always a problem.
Toronto?
It's always a problem with the passengers, when mostly probably they're Indians from India, and the problem with the visa and everything, so you cannot just
Good point.
drop in
true.
somewhere in
That's true.
some other country, and then they hang around the airport until the airplane is fixed. Doesn't go. Yeah.
And of course, then the other factor is Canadians.
Yeah. Who wants to be
that's
with
true.
them? No way.
Well, they could have just
kidding.
come to the United Kingdom, to England, because we've got a lot of their brethren here. So
Yeah, but I think that
we
they would
wouldn't
have really had to
problem
hold it
fixing
for
their
a
toilets.
quite long time. I don't.
No, I'm just curious as well. Now, I know what kind of toilet designs they have in India. I've used both. I'm wondering which they have on the aircraft. Is it a sit-down one or is it a squat one?
I was hoping that we wouldn't actually get to this point discussion of this.
They did talk about flushing, Nick, so there is flush.
Oh, they both flush. Yeah, they both
But
flush.
the thing that I'm still kind of scratching my head about is the bags and rags
I know.
flushed
What's that
down.
about?
What?
I don't know.
Don't they
I
have
don't
those
know
little,
either.
pictures or symbols that say don't, put anything in the toilet other than, your natural human waste?
Tim has to go soon. He has a comment.
Tim Van Ram in our live chat says, I have to go. Curry up.
Stop currying.
He's currying
So funny.
favor. Is
Yeah.
that right?
He is currying favor. All right. Thank you very
Moving
much,
on.
Sean.
You know what?
Moving
Let's
on.
skip the Brent ones. Let's skip those
Okay.
ones. I'm not feeling it.
Okay.
Let's go to Ant. Ant's audio.
Yeah, Ant Pruitt of the This Week in Technology Twit network fame And he's also an amazing photographer, and he is just a professional in so many ways. And he's a big fan of our podcast, and we love that, and we love you.
We're a fan of his.
And yeah, we're a big fan of yours. And we're going now to play his audio feedback. He says, "Hello, team. Hope you're well. Nothing but love for each of you." Well, thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you, and we have nothing but love for you as well. And so now we're going to hear what he has to say.
Hey there, Miss Liz, Dr. Steph, Captain Nick, I believe Captain Alpha Juliet, AJ, and that other guy, Captain Jeff. Hope y'all doing well. I'm unbelievable as always. I wanted to ask a question regarding crosswinds. Okay, well, extreme crosswinds in particular. We see videos on YouTube that show these just crazy bits of footage of, the massive airliners trying to land in a crosswind, and they do successfully, and it's really extreme, and it almost looks impossible, crazy stuff. I've landed in San Francisco a handful of times, and I can think of at least 2 instances where we're on the approach, and I say I've landed as a passenger. Let me be clear there. On the approach, I remember it feeling weird coming into SFO, not necessarily like turbulence, but I just remember it feeling weird a time or 3. And I was wondering if that was crosswinds that we were experiencing at the time as passengers. Now, I'm assuming it wasn't as extreme as what we see on those videos, but I'm curious to know, for you as pilots, what is that like for you? And you can be as technical as you'd like. What is that like for you if you've ever experienced these crazy crosswinds like we see in these videos? What are your thought processes or anything? I just want to know the whole spiel. So feel free to share it if you can. I'll never be an airline pilot, so I'll never know. But I'm also at peace with that too. I appreciate you in the show, in the community. Y'all really do warm my heart. I love listening to the show each and every week, and I really appreciate all of the information that you all share. Thanks for your time. Do something good for yourself. Do something good for someone else, and know that it's okay to love you some you. Peace.
Oh, and we love you, man.
Hi.
Thank you so much. He's been a longtime supporter of our show, and we love him dearly. So when I'm in I love, or used to, I don't do it anymore, but when I was flying actively, I loved crosswinds. It was just always a challenge. It was, I always had this feeling like, yeehaw! Yeah, like, boom, let's shoot it. Bam! I love the challenge. And you know what?
Cowboy.
I don't know if this is true for the other pilots. Well, everybody here is a pilot on the panel. It seems to me that when there were crosswind, especially gusty crosswind conditions, especially really bad, I got the best landings ever. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that you are working so hard to counteract all the little, gusts of crosswinds and everything else, and trying to get it. You're super vigilant, and you're really working it hard. Whereas in normal conditions, if it's like light winds or no winds, you kind of just went, okay, I'm going to flare. That wasn't, you just kind of give up on it, and you don't really work that hard. I don't know. Is it just me, or do you guys share the same kind of feeling when it comes to that?
Some of my best landings are absolutely high crosswind landings. Absolutely. Yeah. You like you said, you're so focused. And in my case, very lucky.
Well, the luck has a lot to do with it. I'd rather be lucky than good. Is that the saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steffen's flown some very big airplanes. So
yeah,
I'd just like to know
Captain.
what it was like landing 380 in a big crosswind. Steffen, was it easy?
Or did you even notice it?
Heavy, or was there something special?
What
Winds?
what crosswind? What are you talking about?
Oh, well, I only flew it 5 years and I only made 89 landings, so I didn't get a chance to experience a lot of winds. But the big heavy aircraft experience, before that I was flying the 7-3, and it was, conventional control and everything. Even if it was gusty, the same feeling as you, Jeff, or that you got the airplane under control. You landed. Most of my best landings were also done with lots of crosswind or gusty winds, whatever. Maybe because you're so concentrated. But if it's getting very gusty in a big airplane, the airplane is simply going straight through these wind changes and doesn't really care about anything, but it makes the airspeed fluctuating much more. So you're kind of more sensitive about wind shears and everything. A thing which on the small airplane, I think you really, as you said, you fly through it. It doesn't really, the airplane reacts with it. But when the aircraft is 500 tons, gusty winds really bothers you because you always fix it about the speed. You have to be very aggressive with the power. That's what my opinion or my experience is. That's now getting small airplanes versus big airplanes in crosswind conditions.
Yeah. Yeah, and the smaller airplanes, I guess you can really feel the winds so much more than the airliners. How about some of our GA guys? What do you think? Same kind of deal? Does it cross over to the smaller airplane world?
Yeah, I think so. The other trick for me, I've done a fair amount of tailwheel flying, and that also introduces kind of a new element to it because it's a little bit of a different animal trying to keep a tailwheel airplane going straight in normal crosswinds, or in normal winds. So crosswinds just kind of impact that a little bit further, and then also you have to pay a little bit more attention taxiing the airplane and on, at the end of the takeoff roll. Like with a tricycle gear airplane, once you have the wheels on the ground, you have to be cognizant of the wind, but the airplane will try to keep going straight. But when you have a tailwheel airplane with a crosswind, even once you got all the wheels on the ground, you got to kind of keep
flying it,
keep on top of the airplane.
Even when it's on the ground. Yeah.
Especially a tailwheel, but anything that has a castering wheel, either at the front or the back. Tailwheels are castering wheels at the back. Usually it's steerable, but most will still caster around on you. But even flying in the L-39, it's a castering nose wheel. And there's a period where when you're slowing down on the runway, you start to lose elevator effectiveness or rudder effectiveness, but the wind is kind of gaining effectiveness as you slow down, right? So it can get kind of interesting because you're purely steering that with differential braking. So,
I was going to say, the only thing you have left is
handle.
Differential braking, right? Yeah.
And the differential braking on that is not like anything traditional where you have a toe pedal and a toe pedal, right? You have a single bicycle brake lever that's on the stick, and the amount of rudder you put in when you squeeze the handle is what the braking differential that's applied. So you have to continuously let go, change your rudder, squeeze the brake.
That sounds way too much.
It's terrible.
Too many things to think about.
It's terrible.
AJ, that reminds me, it's exactly the same as the setup in the Hawker Hunter that I flew in my early days, because they had just exactly like a bicycle brake on this control column, and then you'd apply a bit of brake, and if you wanted to steer, then you just had to put rudder on and then apply the brake again, and it would bias the brake towards whichever rudder you had forward. So yeah, we found that quite interesting. Very interesting during formation takeoffs, because you're trying to steer the airplane using this weird brake rudder thing, praying that you'll accelerate fast enough for the rudder to become aerodynamically effective when it all just fell back into place again.
But at least you have 2 or 3 feet, of wiggle room.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was just going to say, there's kind of 2 main techniques for crosswind landings. One is to align yourself with the runway and point down it, and then drop a wing. And then you rely on the fact that with a wing down, the airplane's going to side slip into the crosswind, and you're going to use that technique to track straight down towards the runway. And all you have to remember to do is to pick the wing up before you land. And I've always kind of gone, how the hell do you do that? Because I never had to do that during my time in 50 years of aviation, because all the airplanes I flew, the recommended crosswind technique was the crabbing technique, which was to put your lovely pink backside more or less on the extended center line of the runway, and then point the nose into wind, so that as you drifted so the wind would keep you in position. And that was fine. And the main reason was you don't really want to fly a wing down technique when you've got big fuel tanks and stuff hanging off the bottom of the wing. On a low wing aeroplane as well, in particular, you don't want to bash something on the runway. And when I came to the civvy world, and then my first airliner was the A340, which was at the time the longest airliner that had ever been built. We were using the same technique for the same reason. We got engine pods hanging down. We don't want to drop a wing, so we're crabbing in. But I soon realized that in order to crab the aircraft in a strong crosswind, the cockpit is actually over the grass. You're nowhere near, you as a physical person at the front of the aeroplane are nowhere near the middle of the runway. You're over the side of the runway, if not over the grass, depending on the ferocity of the crosswind. And you just had to trust and use your imagination to think, well, behind me, all the wheels are over the runway. I might be sitting over the grass, but behind me all the wheels are. All I've got to remember to do is when we come to the flare, I'm going to try and just motor the cockpit around using the rudder and get the nose wheel on the runway, and hopefully before we start drifting off the side, we're going to get all the wheels down and everything's going to be fine and beaut. But it was quite a mental trick there to put yourself in what apparently looks such a stupid position to be flying the airplane, but in reality, hello,
Jeff,
what happened?
Nick's going off the runway.
Well, you know what?
That's exactly what it looked like. What the devil? All right, it's obviously wanting me to shut up, which I'm now doing.
That's what his camera does. After Nick talks for a while, it just goes, "Oh, that's enough."
Did you put that into his camera, Jeff?
I have nothing
sure
to do
it's
with
Jeff that does that.
There's programmed it.
Nick, at Oshkosh, there's a really neat simulator that's over in the I don't remember what they call it, but it's where the museum is, and there's a pilot training center that they have set up, and they have a Crosswinds simulator.
Oh, really?
And all it is a little. It's very, very simple. It's like a little cockpit. It has a stick and it has a rudder, and the power. There's no power settings. There's nothing. None of that. You're set on a descent angle, and as you set up your crosswind, it moves. The simulator just moves back and forth on like little railroad tracks.
Oh, wow.
And it'll move at a fairly good clip. So the runway is on the screen in front of you, which it does not move. So the screen, and you're moving back and forth like this. And it was absolutely the most entertaining thing to watch people get on this thing and try to get coordinated with it, because this thing would just go slamming from one end of the tracks to the other.
It's great.
But it's really neat to show those two techniques.
Oh, absolutely. But you and Jeff are quite right, because, if you land an airplane beautifully in a big crosswind, that is, quite an achievement, because as you straighten the airplane, the moment just before your wheels touch, you've got to remember that the wing you're bringing forward is going to roll up into the air. And because it's the advancing wing, it's now getting more lift than the other one. So whilst you're kicking rudder, you've got to put aileron on in the opposite direction, and you've got to anticipate that, because if you wait for the airplane to start rolling, you're kind of a bit late. You might risk scraping a wing. So you're doing this weird kind of dance of you trying to flare, roll, and use rudder all at the same time in this coordinated little, mishmash of effort. And when you get it right, it's just such a good feeling, isn't it?
Yes, it's like patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time.
And chewing gum.
Yes, Steffen.
Yeah. By the way, the landing technique you described, Captain Nick, is the one we've been doing the whole time for especially long ones. And the 747 crews, they also said, put the cockpit over the edge lights and during strong crosswind, and it will straight up with the center of the runway. But there was a big landing accident. You can find the video also by YouTube from a 34600 in, I think it was in Japan, in Tokyo, and that changes a bit. They moved away. So you should have your cockpit now between the edge and the center line, so to give some room that the airplane is swinging from the back, is swinging back and forth, and so the wiggling movement, if it happens that you more being in the center than on again the.
Oh, okay, right. Well, that's changed over the years.
Yeah, it changed everywhere. It's
Are you sure that's not the video with Nick landing in a hurricane in Hong Kong?
But
not that old story
to the
again.
accident in Toronto with the CIA yacht who flipped over. It was maybe later on I'll find out the video. It's awful. It's a very intense landing, and he also bounces down only with one wheel, and then the other wheel, and it also was a 3.8 G hit on one wheel, and the aircraft was grounded for 6 weeks over there to get it repaired because it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was a landing trainer, by the way, and so someone who should know how to land, but it still happened occasionally.
Well,
Oh boy.
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Moving right along.
Yeah. Oh, just quickly, Steffen, you were mentioning your flags out of the 737. There we go.
Look at that.
That's
very
a good
nice.
picture. Yeah.
So you had like a pulley, like a rope pulley thing, and it would just pop out, or how did that work?
It was an old shirt and two pieces of wood, and when I closed the window, I pulled the shirt tight, and the flag was erecting, and then it was sticking, perpendicular to the
let me write that
left
down.
and to the right. It was very nice.
Oh, that's brilliant. How did you get the football on the nose?
So the fact is that it usually with the World FIFA Championship, everything has its own patent. I mean, you cannot use any symbols on it to pay money to this FIFA thing, but the ordinary soccer, the one everybody knows, with the black and white spots with the six, it's not patented. It's a free thing. So my company painted it on the nose, and it was a much better sign than the official FIFA Champions soccer thing.
Good job.
Yeah, it was a good job.
Yeah,
and didn't cost them anything.
Very nice. All right. Wanted to show that. Thank you for sending that, Captain Steffen. We're going to end
with number 11.
With number 11, and I'm trying to find it myself. Here we go. The guy, the professional radio, television guy that does our intros every week, Radio Roger. We love him so much. He sent in this week's voiceover for this show that we played at the beginning. But he also added this. I do have a question. My daughter and her husband were scheduled to fly home from Mexico City to Newark when they were bumped, being told that because of the heat, the plane couldn't take off with a full load. Would that be because the plane was too hot inside to be crowded, or that the heat shortened the takeoff distance while the flight had to carry less weight? Either way, hot weather is not exactly unusual in Mexico City, nor is altitude. Why would the airline not be prepared for this? Sounds strange. So that's his question. Who wants to tackle that?
I was going to say that's got to be the heat, because in the old A340...
The heat inside or outside, though?
Outside. The old
I knew that answer.
A340-300, we used to, people joke about it, but it was a wee bit under pad. So we used to struggle getting airborne from high hot airfields or even low hot airfields like Hong Kong, because
or just airfields.
They didn't have or just getting airborne anywhere.
Smarty pants.
Yeah, come on, give me a break.
I'm just kidding.
So when the temperatures were very high in Hong Kong, or particularly in Johannesburg, where they've got a very long runway, which is great, that compensates, but of course they're up at 5,500 feet, so that altitude, so that loss of air density will make the situation worse. In Hong Kong, for example, which was the most critical, because we always got great loads out of Hong Kong. We always had a huge amount of cargo and a large number of passengers. We would be down to almost 0.5 degrees of temperature, but the air traffic control couldn't really give us 0.5 degrees of temperature. But we were working the sums out to try and carry the absolute maximum we could. with the fuel we needed, and if the temperature rose by 1 degree, as we were taxiing out, they would be, oh no, what are we going to do? Quite often we'd have to turn around and go all the way back, offload a ton of cargo or whatever. So it's all, generally speaking, it's about performance. Can you carry that weight? And if you haven't got a lot of cargo and you've only got passengers, for example, you're going to have to leave passengers behind or whatever. Often that's sometimes the captain's decision as to what he leaves behind, but generally speaking, the company will put a priority on what they want to carry. You might have very valuable, and this was, if you leave it to the captain, he'd go, oh, take a ton of cargo off. You suddenly discover he's left a ton of incredibly valuable cargo behind that would have earned the company thousands of pounds to carry it on that flight, because he didn't understand what type of cargo it was he was dumping off. Whereas a few punters down the back of the airplane, he wouldn't have given two hoots about. But there you go.
So you didn't increase the taxi fuel suddenly to get the more weight out?
Well, we did, only if it was one of our companions, someone's wife, the first officer's wife, or my wife.
Oh.
Sometimes we used to cheat by increasing the taxi fuel to cover the weight, and then hope you so that would make it legal. And then you would
then just taxi
hope
for
you
a long
burnt
time
off
holding the
that
brakes,
taxi
right?
fuel. Yes,
That's
a good idea.
Tried here a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, you actually get airborne with not having burnt that taxi because you put extra taxi fuel on or allocated more fuel to taxi, and so that was naughty. You weren't supposed to do that.
Well, we would have these discussions with dispatchers and they say, okay, here's the situation. And they go, okay, let me get back with you. Okay, we were able to find, that we didn't have this much weight here. So we're let me send you the new numbers. So that game is played everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. But you see, for 100 kilos of the weight of a passenger, it was insignificant on a takeoff where your aircraft weighed 340 tons. So, you know very well that the airplane's it's got enough flex to be able to cope with that. Unlike our poor bloke in there in Alaska with 1,000 pounds
that's
over his weight. He's such a tiny airplane. 1,000 pounds on that is just a huge overweight situation. So, we could cope with that, whereas sadly he couldn't.
Yeah. Tim Van Ram in our live chat says a little more tequila for the nerves on takeoff needed from Mexico City. Yeah. For the pilots or the passengers? Or both? I don't know. Yes, Steffen.
Yeah, but it's very interesting that they bumped full fare passengers. Usually it's the non-ref which are being bumped first and before the flight really departs.
They were probably pre-bumped. They couldn't. They probably weren't even on the airplane.
Yeah. And regarding passenger weights, I don't know if you discussed that. Maybe Captain Nick, did you notice a difference in the amount of fuel you carried when you fly to the States, or whether, for example, when you fly to Hong Kong?
Most certainly, yes. Of course, we used to love Japanese flights.
Yeah.
Because the weight of Japanese passengers was well below the average that we carried. But yes, other countries we went to where passengers tended to be heavier than normal. I mean, we actually had specific weights sometimes for different countries.
Oh, okay.
Because, as opposed to using the standard weights. But, to accommodate the fact that some people are naturally heavy-boned.
Yeah. Flights to the...
I love it.
That's me. I'm heavy-boned.
Big boned.
Yeah, it's interesting that flights to Asia, usually we had about 1/2 ton less trip fuel than flights we have to the States. Maybe they use a little bit more fuel.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not going to take offense to that.
Okay.
Hey, I resemble that remark.
Yeah, it's because the food is so good, over there. Yeah,
that's it.
Right. Yeah, wonderful food.
Let's wrap this baby up.
All right, it's time to wrap this baby up, and I'd like to say, first that it's such a thrill for me to meet every week with my good aviation friends and even people like the people that are here with me today. No, I'm just kidding. That's who I'm talking about, you guys. Thanks for spending your time, taking the time to be with us each and every week. And your knowledge, expertise is invaluable. So thank you. And I'd like to point you over to our Airline Pilot Guy website, airlinepilotguy.com. Lots of good stuff there. You just have to check it out. Just trust me. You'll love it.
And freshly updated.
Yes.
Some of it, I'm sure.
Partially.
Well, sort of. Yeah, let's don't go crazy with that. And we're also, every time I see this slide, I'm thinking, go ahead and pop it up there, Liz. I'm thinking, yeah, Jeff, you need to fix that. And every
I'll
week,
put it down to
it's
remind you.
this moment that I realize that I have not gotten to that. But we're going to go ahead and you could just say whatever's on there. So, Captain Nick, would you do the honors, please, to tell us about social media?
Okay, if you're a fan of Facebook, then go to facebook.com/Airline Pilot Guy to find us there. On X, the handle is @APG Crew. Instagram is where I tend to post the artwork. We don't have much presence there, but that's where you can find us. Instagram.com/APG Crew. And of course, YouTube, where you see this wonderful sausage being mashed up, is youtube.com/@Airline Pilot Guy. And if you want to be specific and not search for us, add another / and streams.
Yeah.
Well done.
But that works. We're in the dark again. Also,
Who keeps putting the lights out?
Liz keeps turning the lights out.
I can't move my cursor fast enough.
Let's see.
Who's in one of your bathrooms?
Oh, a bathroom. Yeah. Let's see if he's figured out where I'm
How many bathrooms
living.
have you got?
Only 2
Only 2
for one person. That's pretty good, huh?
Wow.
Hey, hello. Hello.
Have you tried?
Tell us about
tried
Slack?
sitting on one and peeing into the other?
No. Hey, but the good news is that Hillel's got the bathroom to himself.
Oh.
Right?
Lord.
Don't have to worry about that anymore.
That'd be nice.
All right, so he's going to tell us about Slack right now.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share news and ideas, we suggest episode and Plain Tales topics, we plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com. Or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks, Hillel.
I need a towel. I got shampoo in my eyes.
Okay, I'll be right there. Yeah, so needy. Yeah.
Get him to pee into his eyes. It's a good way of flushing it down.
Well, okay. I'll let you tell him. All right, and we also...
perhaps that's for cobra spit. Oh,
yeah, wrong thing.
Thought it was jellyfish
not the
stings.
And also, we'd like to thank our director, our producer, who does so much behind the scenes.
Well done, Liz. Great job. Oh, nice queenly. Very queenly salute.
Yeah. All right. And Steffen, thank you for joining us. And do I have my microphone? Oh, you're still muted, Liz. There you go.
Liz was talking.
You'll be on your own next. You'll be on your own next week, boys.
Oh, what?
So.
Oh no!
We'll have to take the week off if
Jeff,
you're not here.
Jeff, what's going to happen?
It's going to be
Heading to
bad.
Montreal, so
It's going to be bad. Yeah.
Montreal.
Captain Steffen and Captain Alpha Juliet, thanks for joining us today. And Camacho, yeah. I mean, it's always great to have the crew, the regulars with us as well. So, Dr. Steph tells us that she apologizes, but she has a lot of things going on and she couldn't make it with us this week. And Miami Rick, I'm not sure. He didn't tell us anything.
No? Radio silence.
Is he still alive?
I think so, yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
He still posts things. Anyway, we love him. We love everybody that's part of our APG team. And we also love all these great people in our live chat room. So you should check it out sometime. Head over to, I don't know, what do we tell them? All these social media places, and you can see when we're going to be doing the show. And then you can join us by just going to the APG calendar. You can see there's a link to the YouTube broadcast, or you can go to our website for APG on YouTube, and lots of good ways to get there. So I think you'd enjoy it. So with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off and wish you all clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy.
Good day.
I used to be such a good pilot till I started APG. I opened doors for little old ladies. I helped them to their seats. Airline pilot guy, I fly America. Oh, airline pilot guy, he can land in heavy fog. I got no friends 'cause I'm always flying. I just don't have the time. But I can land this old plane. I can land it just fine. Airline pilot guy, I fly